Hello and welcome to the Walk Around podcast powered by JM&A Group. If you're in the automotive business, this is the place for you. You're going to learn how to grow your dealership, your customers, or your automotive career with insights into sales, finance, customer experience, and leadership. I am one of your hosts, Mark Spoto, and I will be joined by Elliot Shore. And today on the Walk Around, we are welcoming Nicole Wakelin. She is an automotive journalist who has covered the business for over a decade. She's worked in a wide range of publications from U.S. News and World Report, the Boston Globe, Kelley Blue Book, CNET, Forbes, on and on. She also co-hosts two weekly podcasts, Wheel Bearings and Fast Women, powered by Newsweek. She is a wealth of information about cars themselves, and she also talks a great deal about what can we look forward to in the future of cars. We talked about EVs, we talked about technology, and we even learned the #1 sci-fi TV show of all time. You don't want to miss this conversation. Now let's take a walk around with Nicole Wakelin. Well, we are excited to have Nicole Wakelin on the program with us today, a professional podcaster.
I know, right? We are very lucky.
We have a lot to learn here.
I know. We have a high standard to live up to.
She's also just a renowned journalist in the automotive space. And that's where we kind of wanted to get started, Nicole. First of all, welcome.
Thank you so much.
And I am absolutely fascinated by the World Car Awards.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That, and you are a jurist. Is that correct? Is that
technically,
the way?
I believe the correct phrase is just juror. Jurist is too fancy.
Just juror. We're already learning.
Gosh,
that's it.
Man.
We're already learning.
I knew I shouldn't have said that. I'm going way above my sort of academic level here.
There's a lot to learn here today.
Yeah.
So, Nicole, tell us just right away, how did you get started in this business? When you were a youngster growing up, did you think, hey, I want to be in the right about cars? Where did you take a turn, so to speak, to get into this line of work?
I wish I could say that I wanted to write about cars since I was a toddler, but that's not the case. I've always liked them. I was always fascinated with them. I was the kid who couldn't wait to get my license, and I loved cars. I didn't really think about being an automotive journalist until it kind of presented itself. I was covering pop culture. I'm a big nerd. So Star Wars, Star Trek, comics, all that kind of stuff. And a decade or so ago, an OEM was having some folks in as a lifestyle kind of wave. And they asked the site that I write for at the time, it was called Geek Mom. Exactly what you think, moms who are geeks. And there's nothing hidden there. And they wanted someone to come and write about a car. They're like, hey, come to this event, write about a car. And no one had any interest in cars. I was like, well, I do. I don't know what they want me to do, but I can show up and do that. And it literally started from that. I did that one event and I thought, wait, this is something I can actually do. Oh, I want to do this. And that's what finally kicked me off doing this as a career.
So cars wasn't a thing for your family. It's not something your mom and dad were really into and influenced you on. You kind of grew up with that on your own.
Yeah, my parents, cars did the job. They got you where you needed to go. And that was about it. Neither one of them was particularly into cars. I do know that my mom had said she always wanted a Corvette. She never got one, but I do remember that being her dream car. So she must have liked cars to a point. But yeah, they were never, car culture really wasn't a part of their lives or my life growing up. It was just, I just always thought cars were so neat because I grew up in southern New Hampshire and there's not a lot around. So you have a very small communities. If you want to do anything or go anywhere, you got to get a car and you got to go to someplace. It's not like you're in a city and you've got stuff to do. So a car was the ultimate freedom. So the idea of getting a license, I don't care what, as long as it had an engine and wheels so I could go places, that was a big deal. So yeah.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned that because we talk a lot. Both Mark and I have kids around similar ages. And we talk a lot with professionals in the industry about whether kids want to even drive, whether they want a driver's license. Is our industry doomed to be robo-taxis of Ubers driving people around that no one wants to drive? But, one of the things we feel, and I'm curious, your travels across the world, across the country, talking to all different manufacturers, all different people, in all different cultures. what we feel honestly, and I think I speak for you here, but
For sure.
we still see that passion between culture and cars. We really do, even in younger adults. Maybe it's not everyone, but we still see that passion. Do you think it's still there?
I do. It was funny when my kids were growing up, because of what I do, they got exposed to all these cars and they thought they were fun, but I didn't think they were necessarily into cars or had this great interest in them. And in fact, my older daughter, who's now in college, said, I get my license because I need to have it, but I don't really care about cars. Then she got to college, and then she was stuck on a college campus where she couldn't go anywhere because it was just the college campus. You're confined to that in the public transport. When she got an internship and had to get a car, she's like, cars are amazing. I love cars. Cars are the best thing ever. I love my car. She goes off driving. She goes places. She does things now that she sees the difference between not having that freedom and having it. She loves cars.
It's funny how perspective changes.
It sure is.
It does.
That leads me to our next question here. We're so curious, as someone who makes their living reviewing cars.
Yes.
What do you drive in your personal life?
Yeah.
That's not fair. Okay. Because I've had this car forever. I actually got this car before I started doing this.
Fair caveat.
I don't drive a lot. So it's older because I don't need to drive my own car a lot. I'm always driving cars for test drives.
Well, I'm going to guess it's a 4-wheel drive because you're in New Hampshire.
It is exactly the opposite. It's a rear-wheel drive sedan.
Wow.
I have a 2010 Dodge Charger in the garage.
Interesting.
That is interesting. I would have never pegged that.
Nope.
Right?
Never.
But I had all these like responsible mom cars. Like I had an SUV and then I got tired of it and I just want a car that's fun. And so I got a Charger. But I don't drive it a lot. The other car that we have, because my husband has one too, so it's kind of like two cars. He has something that's really fun too. He has a Wrangler Rubicon 4xe, the plug-in hybrid.
Oh, wow. Now we're talking.
See, so I have an old, technically mine is a little bit older, but his is new and taking advantage of new technology. And we love that one. That's a hoot to drive.
I haven't even seen that one.
No, that's
Rubicon plug-in.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's it says 4, like their thing. It's like, 4x4, it's 4xe and it still says 4xe. These are a cute little pun thing. It's fun. It's neat. And you can go the cool thing about it with an off-road car is you can put it in electric mode and then you're driving off-road and there's nothing. Like you don't hear the sound of your engine and you take off the doors and you just hear whatever it is that's around you. So it's a really fun car to have.
Well, and if anyone's driven a Jeep, they know that those cars can be loud.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned fun because, when we listen to your podcast, which by the way, we love the name.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
I said, when Mark said the name of your podcast, I said, what?
Mm-hmm.
And it's by Newsweek, right?
That's right.
This is not just,
and that's what he clarified.
Right. This is a professional thing we're talking about.
Yes. Well, we wanted to get a name that everyone would go, I'm sorry, what was the name of that podcast? Yeah, Fast
That's
Women.
exactly what I said.
Exactly what you think I said is what I said.
So you guys talk a lot about the fun aspect of driving your car. And it's a little bit of kind of a lifestyle podcast because you're talking about destinations and where you're going. So we wanted to ask, what's the most fun you've had in test driving?
Yeah, what country? Like I got to admit, we have to admit, when we were listening, we had some serious kind of jelly going on of what you do for a living here. I mean, flying around to Thailand, to
rally races.
Yeah, rally races. I mean, it's pretty awesome.
Wrong path.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome what you do. And we were really curious, like, what's been the best experience? What's been the most fun?
It's so hard to pick one thing because it is such a diverse bunch of stuff. I really enjoyed, you're talking about rallies, and it was just here in the Northeast. We did the Mille Miglia has a warm-up rally that they do here, and we got to drive a new car. We drove an Alfa Romeo Stelvio. But a lot of the folks have these really vintage cars, like things that are super duper redonkulously expensive that I'd normally be nervous even driving too close to on the highway for fear of what like the slightest little scratch. It's like, oh, that's 20 grand out the window. Like they're these beautiful cars, but it was such an interesting group of people. And that's what a lot of the events that I like the most. The cars are cool and the cars are fun, but it's the people at them that make them so interesting. And these are people who flew over from Italy and one guy flew in from his private island to drive his car. I mean, this was a weird, interesting, eclectic mix of people. And it was so fun to hang out with them. and learn how to do this drive and just have a good time with it. And then we went and had pizza at this pizza joint. So it was really kind of fun. It's the people that makes the events really cool.
That sounds a lot like the car business to me.
Yeah.
It really does. It really does. It's absolutely the people. And, you touched on, it's funny with your husband's, plug-in Wrangler Rubicon. I'm sure I won't get the name right, but one of the things we noticed flipping over to the World Car Awards. Thank you, Mark. I don't know.
You got it. Good job.
I'm here for you.
Thank you. I appreciate that always. One of the things we noticed with the World Car Awards is the top 3 this year were all electrics. And I think in 21, it was all EVs as well, in terms of the overall top world car. And, my question is, as a professional reviewer, someone who just really gets around the industry a lot, how do you view the change from ICE to EV? How do you view that from a reviewer perspective? Is it just another car? Is it no big deal? Or is it really a big deal?
Well, you know what the thing is, like for me to drive an EV, because I've been doing it for a while, for me, I'm like, okay, whatever, big deal, it's an EV. Like, because we're getting used to them as journalists. We've been driving them for a while. But that's not the case for the general public. The general public, it's still kind of new out there technology. And there's people who are really comfortable with the idea of plugging in a vehicle and not having an engine underneath there and not filling up. And there's other people that are really nervous about it. So I think it's interesting technology in that when I present it to people, I have to present it and think I'm not talking to another journalist. I'm talking to someone sitting in their living room who may never have driven anything, not even a hybrid, and has no idea what they need to know about this car. So it's a matter of trying to make it in very digestible chunks and explain it in a way that they can relate to how it will or maybe won't, depending on the person, work with their lifestyle and how and where they drive.
So where do you fall on the EV spectrum? I know you're itching to get rid of the Dodge at some point, but when that day comes, maybe in a few years, who knows? Where do you fall on that spectrum and why?
We've talked about it, my husband and I, a lot because, we're both driving the cars. So it's not like it's all mine or all his. I think our next car has a really big chance of being just a straight up electric vehicle. I don't think me personally, I'm ready to completely give up any kind of gas engine in my little fleet of 2. I want something that I can fill up with gas if I need to, because it is easier on road trips. I mean, just, having to plot out where to stop to charge, when to stop to charge. And if you want to be kind of spontaneous, you can only be so spontaneous when the nearest charger is not in that tiny little podunk town where you found the world's largest ball of twine. Like you have to, you have to find a place. So it makes it, you have to plan a little bit more. So for a road trip, I still like having a gas engine, whether it's, I like that. But in my everyday at home, I'd be perfectly fine just driving an EV all the time.
So you must get a lot of feedback from, people who read your articles or listen to your podcasts. What are you hearing from others about adoption of EV? Is that battery concern one of the biggest you're hearing, or are there some other roadblocks to adoption?
I think the 2 biggest things that I hear from people and just from my colleagues, their feedback from people is that they're more expensive than gas powered cars, either just a hybrid, which is both, or just a purely, ICE engine. You're paying more for it. And there is still this range anxiety. People are really, really nervous that they're going to run out of power. They're going to run out of juice. The battery's dead and there's nowhere to charge. The reality of it is, I think, maybe 250 miles is at least what most of them have for range. There's some smaller range vehicles, but let's say 250 average.
Sure.
Most people aren't driving that much in a typical day. You aren't driving that far to work or to take your kids to school or grocery shopping or all those things together. Yeah. So you can probably get by with an EV and never once have to charge it out and about and just plug it in and charge it at a home charger. Yeah. So it's like a valid thing if you've never driven one and you've heard all the worries. But when you look at the numbers, it's not a concern for most people. Most people in a day, you're never going to use that whole battery.
It's funny. You're very, very practical. We've spoken and had on here Jason Stein. We've had Doug Betts, president of JD Power.
AJ from Polestar.
Also talking very similarly about some practical, real reasons why EV adoption may not be this huge hockey stick that kind of the industry is projecting. But I think you laid it out very nicely. I mean, even from your own experience, right? Road trips, I've said the same thing. That's my bigger concern is something about, for us in South Florida, right? Hurricanes. If you have to leave for a hurricane, I don't know that you want an EV if you're stuck on 95 driving north,
right?
And having to contend with others potentially and get stuck on the side of the road if a hurricane's coming. So, that's a very practical, real thing that I think that you're explaining in terms of what people feel. But I will say, the one thing I like to always say is ask people about when they talk about range anxiety and it not being a big deal, and they talk about the range. The question I have is, how do you feel when your phone hits 49% charged? How do you feel?
Charge it up.
Exactly.
Do you get anxiety?
You want to charge up your phone.
Right. I do too. And that's the thing. Like it's not a rational anxiety, right? Like meaning I know
it's probably going to be okay.
It's probably going to be fine.
But you don't know for sure. It might not be okay. But you don't know, right? You just don't know.
That's
exactly it.
And what do you start doing, right? Oh, well, let me turn notifications off, right? Let me lower my brightness.
Yeah.
Is it going to be the same thing? Are you going to start using your car differently? Is that anxiety bleed over to old school days, if you're running out of gas, and you got the AC on, turn the AC off, right?
But something that I recall that AJ from Polestar was talking to us about was very similar to what Nicole just said. When he started out test driving and realized that in the course of everyday life, it works out.
Yeah.
It's fine. You just have to give it that opportunity that you may not be, used to. It's something new that we haven't tried before.
Yeah. And it is weird to the first few times you do it to get out of your car and take the plug and plug it in. You're like, oh, okay. Like it's not what we're used to. None of us are doing that. So the entire process of owning one is just very different. I think you get used to it pretty quickly. Once you start plugging in a car, it becomes sort of second nature, but there's a lot of sort of overcoming it to the objections and the worries about it. I think that's why it's so great that there's not just there's electrification, not just EVs. You can do a hybrid, you can do a plug-in hybrid, or you can do pure EV. I like the plug-in hybrid because I feel like it's the baby step.
Yeah.
You still have a gas engine, you still plug it in. If you let that charge run down, doesn't matter. You got your gas engine and you can plug it in. So you get used to the idea of using chargers, of plugging it in without that fear that you're going to be somewhere where there's no place to do that and you're not going to be able to get gas. So I feel like that's a good, I want to move that far, but I'm not quite ready. Then look at a plug-in hybrid.
It's great advice.
Yeah. And certainly Toyota agrees with that advice. That's
definitely some manufacturers do agree with that. And I think based on some of the research I've read, that's probably actually the most environmentally friendly way to do it is to actually do it from a plug-in perspective.
So Nicole, obviously EVs are a hot trend happening, but there's got to be some other technologies or features that you really look forward to when you're test driving.
Yeah, you must see some cool stuff.
What are some cool things that are coming or that you've seen that car buyers should be on the lookout for?
The cool stuff, I'm a big one for putting a lot of value on the interior of a car, because what's under the hood, or if there's not an engine, whatever makes it work underneath,
right?
Does its stuff. But you're sitting in the car, you're sitting in that seat, looking at that dashboard, dealing with those controls all the time. So that kind of stuff is the sort of stuff that can make you hate your car or love your car after you've lived with it for a few weeks. So I put a really high importance on that. What I'm looking forward to is the fact that, and increasingly so, the infotainment screens are large enough that they show you what you need to see, like you're following directions, right? So you're not following it on like your little teeny tiny phone, trying to figure out where you're going. And that they're becoming easy enough and intuitive enough with the voice activation that you can talk to things and you're not like saying, call mom. And instead it's like, okay, starting maintenance. You're like, no, I wanted to call my mom, So I feel like that the screen size is getting bigger and clearer and the infotainment system is getting so much more intuitive, and that the voice activation is truly getting really good. In fact, Lexus, I love that when depending on who talks to it, so whether you're sitting in the driver's seat or the passenger seat, when you talk, it responds on that side. So it knows enough to know that the driver's talking or the passenger's talking. So it creates a sort of personalized experience. Like, I realize who's talking to me. I realize who asked this question, and I'm going to respond to it. So I think that technology getting less clumsy and getting more refined is something, especially if you're driving a car that's older and has an early infotainment system that makes you want to take a hammer to it.
Sure.
I feel like the new ones reduce that frustration significantly.
Do you think that and I, know from talking to some manufacturers, there's a lot of debate over whether they should just give it up to Apple or give it up to Google and call it a day, as opposed to them building, because historically, they all built their own proprietary infotainment systems. And,
right.
Not to call it any manufacturers, but a lot of times it was a source of pride for the country. It was a source of revenue, let's call it what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And, but then you had, sort of German, if you ever tried to use a German nav, it talks to you like you're German, it does,
Yeah.
which for, an American is very unintuitive, and it just makes the whole process more complicated. In your view, what do you think? Do you think is this a losing game for the manufacturers?
Well, I get what you're saying. And everybody wants to have Apple CarPlay or Android Auto capability in their car because it's so easy to use your phone, right? You're used to using it. You have it in your hand all the time, panicking when it gets too low on the battery. So you always have it. But the thing is, there are things, especially with EVs, that your phone can't do. So your phone can't monitor exactly how charged your car battery is and exactly how you're driving to tell you that, because a lot of these EVs especially will help you understand whether you're going to need charge a little sooner than you think because you're running that battery down a little bit more quickly because maybe you're going uphill or you're driving really aggressively or, the temperature, right? All these different reasons. Your car can tell you that and can make it really easy to understand by showing you on an infotainment screen in a system that the automaker has made. Your phone can't do that. And that's a big piece. There's things that that Apple just can't do. I mean, could they at some point? Sure, they're Apple. They could spend money. They could do that. But I think the automakers having that ability to really closely monitor what's happening with their cars and give you the information you need, especially as EVs become more of a thing, that's something that the automakers can do better than Apple. And I feel like that would be a huge change for Apple to suddenly be like, we're going to get so into car technology that we're going to be able to give you that information on your Toyota, on your Ram, on your Jeep, on your whatever, and do it equally for all those different automakers.
What a great perspective, because it isn't a very interesting perspective because it's definitely not one I've heard before. So thank you for sharing that. But it does give you reason to pause and think about, I guess what comes to my mind is sort of when you start to really think about that is sort of, do you really want Apple and Google monitoring your driving? Mm-hmm. If you're, data privacy comes to mind and data security comes to mind. And would you rather share your data in a closed network with a, Toyota or a GM as opposed to sharing it with Google, who what they're going to do with it? I mean, right? I mean, we know, right? They're going
to keep it all safe and secure and never share it with anyone. I don't know what you're talking about.
Never. So, that becomes interesting. And in the EU, EU data privacy is a bigger concern for the general public there. Mm-hmm. The Americans to date have sort of kind of just gone along with it. Okay,
but it's growing.
I think you're right.
A lot more, emphasis on data privacy, especially in the car business.
Yeah, 100%. I think people are concerned. People don't want to have everyone knowing every place they go every day and necessarily being able to feel like Big Brother is watching them. And I think once you have Apple, doing all that, there is that Big Brother kind of feeling like there's one guy and he knows every move I've made from my house to my car to my office and back again. And that is definitely disconcerting for a lot of people.
Personally, I love it because that means I get served with better ads on Instagram.
You would love it. Marketer, you.
I'm the marketing guy, so of course I love it.
I get the worst ads. Like occasionally on my Facebook, I'll get an ad for something and I'm like, why do I need that? I've never mentioned golf. I've never golfed in my whole life.
You can potentially.
I'm pretty sure I'm not going to take up golf, but all of a sudden I'll be getting all these ads for it or something. I'm like, what did I accidentally click on?
That's so funny.
That this is what I'm interested in today.
So Nicole, speaking of buying.
Oh my gosh, the stuff Facebook thinks I need. They're so on the money.
Of course they are.
And I keep buying it too. It's a problem. I don't even remember I buy it. It just shows up.
Shows up.
Yeah, it's so quick.
That's right. So, Nicole, based on what you said, you don't buy cars too often, right? but you certainly are in tune with car buyers and people in the market. So obviously our podcast is targeted at the automotive business and folks who work in dealerships. Mm-hmm. So when you think about the transaction of buying a car, we hear a lot about how much of it is becoming more online and more digital. No one's really solved it 100% of the way yet, but we're getting pretty close.
Yeah.
So, when you think about buying a car online, how does that play into the test drive? Because from our perspective, and Elliot and I, we've talked about this a lot, testing out the car is still a fundamental and important part of the process as to whether you even are going to buy the car.
Absolutely.
So, how do you feel about that in terms of the online transaction and what dealers should be thinking about?
I think the thing is that encouraging someone to test drive a car before they buy it is huge, because you really don't know, there's all this advertising, there's all this information, and you suddenly think you like car A and it looks like the best thing ever. And then you go and you sit in it and you're like, this is not going to work for me. I can't get a car seat in the back.
So true.
Or it's too short.
I hate the seats.
Right. I hate the seats, or this is a fiddly infotainment system, or the cargo area is too hard in the doors, whatever. You can find a million things that you suddenly don't know you don't like until you spend a few minutes with a car. So I think driving it is huge. And I think even if someone's going through the whole buying process online, something to encourage, okay, we know you want this. You're really interested in this. You are 100% sold on buying that car. We would like you to have a drive in it before you do, take it for a drive. We're not going to try and convince you not to buy it. We're not going to try and convince you from going to the base trim to the every conceivable bell and whistle trim. Just give people an opportunity to drive it where they don't feel pressured that you're trying to upsell and do all this extra stuff. People will come in and will drive it. And the good thing about that is then they have a better chance of driving away in a car that they like, whether it's the one they thought they were going to get to begin with, or whether they realize they don't, and you can guide them to one that they do. Either way, you're creating a positive experience where someone is saying great things because I went to the dealer, I drove it, and they helped me. They gave me exactly what I wanted, or they showed me that, I didn't like that. I got this other one instead, and I still got exactly what I wanted, even if it wasn't what I expected. So I think that's still an important part of the process, making it easy to come in and just give the car a drive.
Yeah, that is great feedback for dealers that are listening, for people in the car business. And we've talked a lot about the evolving needs of the consumer and really the evolving role the dealer will play in fulfilling those needs. And what you're describing seems right on the money, Mark, in terms of just be helpful, right? You have the asset, you have the car. People are going to want to drive it. Mm-hmm. They're going to want to know the difference of the features. They're going to want to understand what's available. Just be helpful in that process, and you can win a customer for life.
Yeah, my takeaway from what Nicole was saying is it's, vitally important to create a good experience for your customer, regardless of the advertising or the work that you do to earn that customer through social media or marketing. You've got to still create that relationship.
Yeah, that's a great, it's amazing how much money is spent on advertising for it to work. And then they come to the dealership and then it falls apart.
Right.
Right. I mean, what a shame. What a loss of advertising dollars.
And that's the thing you hear about, right? Someone talks about going to get a car and they say they bought a new car, and you'll hear two things when you ask your friends, right? Oh my God, I love this car because, or buying it at the dealership was so hard because. Right. And they will say if they had a negative dealership experience. So making it easier and more friendly and just kind of helping someone who's already maybe gone through everything online and, built their car and done all that, just making it easy and pleasant goes a huge way. It's the word of mouth where someone says, I went to Bob at XYZ dealership. He was great. They'll go to Bob just because their friends said they had a good experience.
Yeah. And there really is no in between right there. It's either a great experience or an awful. I've never heard anyone say it was okay.
Right. No one's like, it was an all right dealership. They're either like, oh my God, it was the best guys ever, or those people are Satan. There's no difference. That's it.
Very true.
Very true.
All right. Well, on that note,
it's almost time for a sure thing. Nicole, I'm sure since you're in the podcast industry, you have heard about this segment, because we like to say it is sweeping the podcast nation. But I have to ask quickly before we get to a sure thing. Okay. What are you looking forward to test driving coming up? Are there any cool models that you'll be driving in the new year?
Well, so for the new year, things are kind of quieting down because, the holidays are upon us and the OEMs aren't doing a lot of stuff. Everyone kind of calms down. I'm looking to I'm excited to see what the next iteration of the electric vehicles that are coming are.
Cool.
I want to see what the next one, a lot of them have put out the first, like, this is our new platform. This is our new whatever. I'm like, okay, but now the second one's coming. Can you up your game a little bit?
So
I'm excited to try that.
Sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting year ahead for sure.
All right, Elliot, it's time to challenge Nicole here in a sure thing. And I know you've got some hot takes.
I do.
That you've prepared.
I do.
I'm feeling pressured. Okay, go ahead.
Some of which is based on Nicole's interests that she shared.
Yeah,
earlier.
and I got a bonus one that I wrote down during the podcast.
Oh no, what did I say?
Based on a comment that was said.
That's right.
Lord, here we go.
We'll start with the car transaction. And Mark talked about it. You talked about it. And we thought you'd have an interesting perspective on the car transaction going online, considering what you do for a living. And I've always been sort of maybe
bullish,
less bullish. Yeah, a little. I would say bearish.
One of the two.
Depends on how you look at it. But I've always been a little bullish on the car transaction going completely online and being like, it's gone. And it's funny you mentioned your daughter and how she viewed cars before she needed one. I think of the car transaction the same way, but I don't want to lead you too far down this path with me. But I believe that car transactions online, soup to nuts, meaning the customer never sees the dealer, they never see the car, they never go in. I believe that will never, ever be 20% of the total car market. It'll never happen. Sure thing or not sure thing?
20. So it'll never be more than 20%. I think it could be more than 20. It's not a sure thing. I think it could be more than 20%.
Right. Wow.
I don't think it'll be 100%. I don't think it'll be 100%, but I think it could be more than 20.
Ooh, okay. If we had to peg you on a number there.
How many years do I have to get there?
You have forever. You have forever, the entire time, until the world is over.
Let's go with 60%.
Okay.
Wow, 60%.
That was way more bullish than I would have thought.
I feel like a lot of people as they go, especially as younger people who are really comfortable online will be more and more likely to say they want to go online. I feel like 60% could do it. I'm just throwing that out there.
It's funny you say that because my whole theory is based around the fact that they say that, but then when they buy their first car and they hate the smell or they hate the drive, they will never do that ever again.
That's possible.
So there's a backlash in that second car purchase.
There could be.
They won't do it online.
We might have to answer this question again in like 40 years or something. What was our never? 40 years and see what happens.
Have you back. Nicole,
I hope the podcast is still going.
That's right. All right. We're 0 for 1.
All right. That's an 0 for 1? Yeah. Okay, fine. Okay. So, all right, next question. So you've driven a lot of cars in a lot of different countries. But we have a sure thing, and I'm curious Mark's take on this one. But if there was only one country, we're going to leave the United States out, right? We should leave it out. Just not to offend any, of our friends here.
Okay.
But if you had to live in one country for the rest of your life, and only drive that country's vehicles that they produce.
Oh, easy.
Wait, for me, there was only one answer to this question, and that's why it's a sure thing.
Why?
All right. Otherwise, it would just be a question.
Okay.
It wouldn't be a sure thing.
Right.
Okay.
Right. The sure thing is it has to be Italy. It has to be. Right?
Why is it Italy?
Well, first of all, the food, the people, the landscape.
Yes.
And who doesn't want to drive Ferraris for the rest of their life?
There you go.
I mean, come on.
Sure thing or
not a sure thing because it'd be Germany because Germany, it's beautiful. They have schnitzel. Okay.
Chicken. Otherwise known as chicken people.
And there's the Autobahn where you can drive as fast as you
drive as fast as you want.
Like, how could you pass a country where you can go?
Good point there.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'd be driving my Ferrari at 20 miles an hour up weird twisting roads.
And I'm going to be driving my Mercedes as fast as I can reasonably drive it safely on the roads of Germany.
On this one.
Wow, Nicole, you win.
0 for 2.
Jeez.
Can we salvage a sure thing for today?
Oh man, I don't think we are because we'll see.
We'll see.
All right, but so we do understand. We did a little bit of research here, Nicole, and you mentioned it, so it's helpful. But we do know that you're a bit of a sci-fi fan.
Yes.
And
a geek mom.
A geek mom.
Remember?
Yeah,
that's right.
Back in the day, yes.
And we enjoy a little sci-fi show here and there as well.
We do.
Okay.
And we started talking, Mark and I, about the best sci-fi shows of all time. And I have a sure thing for you here.
Oh,
and there's a lot of
I've watched a lot of sci-fi guys, but go ahead.
I had a feeling you would have an opinion on this.
So, there's a lot of sci-fi shows out there. Doctor Who, X-Files, Star Trek, right? Just a ton. Lost is considered a sci-fi show.
Absolutely.
But there's only one show to me that is capable of being calling the best sci-fi show.
Above and beyond.
Above and beyond. Because it was able to make a bad 80s song extremely popular in 2022. And therefore, I'm going to say that Stranger Things is the best sci-fi show of all time. Sure thing or not a sure thing?
Oh gosh, I kind of want to give you that one, but okay, because the 80s music, like I totally get that. I'm a child of the 80s. Can I give him half a point? Am I allowed to give a half a sure thing?
Nicole, you can do whatever you want.
Okay, so then I'm giving him half a point because the best sci-fi show of all time for me only made it one season. It was Firefly.
Oh, wow.
Really digging deep there.
That's a deep track.
I've told you.
There are some real sci-fi fans sitting there going, that's right.
We're going to get a lot of feedback.
I have watched a lot of sci-fi guys in Firefly.
So
that's
your top three would be what? Firefly and then Star Trek?
For shows, Firefly, the new Star Wars one, Andor.
Oh, really? It's good.
Yeah, it's really, really good. I have to pick a third. I can't pick a third. I'm drawing a blank on every other one because now I'm put under pressure. I'll go with Stranger Things.
All right. We'll check the comments on LinkedIn when we post the show, and we'll get a third out of Nicole.
Well, Nicole, this has been a fantastic conversation. We really appreciate you sharing some insights, your travels, your excursions. You make us jealous.
Yes,
sure.
Definitely catch Nicole. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys. This was great.
She's in all sorts of publications and pretty much every automotive news, automotive article, automotive publication, that you can imagine Nicole's worked on. So
just Google her name and you will find Nicole, something great.
Anything you want to plug before we go real quick?
No, you already did. The podcast, Fast Women podcast, if you enjoyed listening to me gibber on about Star Trek and all sorts of car stuff, and also Wheel Bearings. That's another podcast that I co-host, and that's a fun one too that talks all things cars.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Nicole. We really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.